بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So today's topic is on the status of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is basically from At-Tahaawiyyah's creed, the section where he summarizes the position of Ahlul Sunnah towards the companions. And in this lecture, inshallah ta'ala, maybe we'll take two lessons to complete. We want to summarize as the Sharih, the explainer, in this case it is Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh Hafizahullah. We want to summarize in 5 or 6 points the status towards the companions, or the status of the companions of Allah's Messenger, in a very, very concise way, inshallah. In 6 points, everything that we really need to know. And so At-Tahaawi rahimahullah, he said, as part of his creed, he said, وَنُحِبُّ أَصْحَابَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, that we love the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَلَا نُفْرِطْ فِي حُبِّ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ, but we do not exaggerate in the love of any one of them. وَلَا نَتَبَرَّأْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ, nor do we free ourselves from any one of them. وَنُبْغِضُ مَنْ يُبْغِضُهُمْ, we hate the one who hates them. وَبِغَيْرِ الْخَيْرِ يَذْكُرُهُمْ, so we hate the one who hates them and who mentions them with something other than goodness. وَلَا نَذْكُرُهُمْ إِلَّا بِخَيْرٍ, and we do not mention them except with goodness. وَحُبُّهُمْ دِينٌ وَإِيمَانٌ وَإِحْسَانٌ, to love of them is religion, it is faith, it is iman, and it is ihsan, it is benevolence. وَبُغْضُهُمْ كُفْرٌ وَنِفَاقٌ وَطُغْيَانٌ, and to hate them is disbelief and hypocrisy and transgression. Right? So these are very concise statements, and so in what follows, inshallah ta'ala, will be an explanation of all of these statements. And so first of all, just a general introduction. The Shaykh mentions that in these sentences there are some very important principles, because they relate to the best of the creation after the Messenger of Allah from this ummah, the other companions, and speech about the companions has become an issue of creed, of Aqeedah. Even though we know that creed, generally, Aqeedah, is in relation to affairs of the unseen, things that we cannot see, right? Allah, the angels, the books, the messengers, Al-Qadr, the last day, the grave, paradise, hellfire. We hold belief in these things because we have been informed about them, although we can't really see them in the life of this world. However, there are many, many issues that have entered into the issue of belief because they have become a point of distinction between the people of the Sunnah and the people of deviation. Right? So many other issues have entered into the issues of Aqeedah, of creed, and from them is the issue of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they are the carriers of the revelation, right? They took the revelation from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then they conveyed it to the rest of this ummah. We have no way of acquiring this religion except by way of the companions. This means that the issue of the companions has a direct impact, has a direct effect upon the, upon the revelation, its meaning, its transmission, its veracity, its truthfulness, and so on and so forth. Which means that the issue of the adalah, the trustworthiness, the uprightness, the truthfulness, the virtuousness, meaning the goodness of the companions, it has a direct relation to the religion itself. And we know historically that there are groups who basically they appeared in the time of the companions, and they deviated from the way, and they held whatever they held. They spoke ill of the companions. From them are the Rafida, from them are the Khawarij, from them are the Nasiba, right? The Rafida. We'll speak about these inshallah, in the course of the various points, right? But basically there were a number of groups who appeared. Also the Sabi'ah, the followers of Abdullah bin Saba, and the Rafida, and the Khawarij, and the Nasiba. All of them, they took certain positions towards the companions, they opposed them, and they even declared them to be disbelievers, and many other issues arose. So this means that the whole topic of the companions, what is their status, what is our position towards them, what is our position towards who oppose them and speak ill of them, all of these are very, very important fundamental issues. They are fundamental principles of our religion, and because, as we said, they have a direct effect and there are consequences on our creed and on the Quran and on the Sunnah, because they are the ones who conveyed it to the rest of the Ummah. So because these groups appeared, as we mentioned, the Sabi'ah, the followers of Abdullah bin Saba, the Sab'iyah, and the Rafida, and the Khawarij, the Nasiba, the scholars, the companions themselves, and their students, they took a clear position on this issue. And that position became from the creed of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah, from the creed of the Salaf. And so this is the creed that At-Tahawi has basically summarized in these very concise and very deep and meaningful statements. So what we'll do then, we'll start with the 6 points, inshallah. And so this will give us a very good understanding of our position towards the companions. And so the first issue, the first mas'ala, the first issue is really to do with what is the definition of a companion. Now, how do we know what is a companion? How do we define what is a companion of Allah's Messenger? And the definition of that is anyone who man sahiba Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whoever spent time with the Messenger of Allah by meeting him. So it has to be meeting him, even if it was just for a moment, for a moment, whilst he was a believer in him and he died upon that. Right? So there are basically 3 or 4 elements here. The first issue here is man sahiba Rasulullah, basically who came and he met with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, even if it was just for a moment, for an hour or for a moment, whilst he was a believer. So he had to be a believer at the time of meeting him. And then he died upon that. He died upon Iman. Right? So this is the definition, and this meeting, as you can see, part of the definition is to meet the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This meeting itself, or this mixing, is something that varies amongst all of the companions. As you know, there were many thousands of companions, and so not all of them have the same extent of meeting, of mixing, of companionship with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are some of them who accompanied him for a long time, others for a shorter time. There are those who became companions to him earlier on in his prophethood, and there are those who became companions to him later in his prophethood. So the point being that this companionship is not equal, in its length and in the time period, and when it was earlier, whether it was delayed. There are basically variations. And this also shows, as the Shaykh mentions, that all of the companions therefore are not at the same level. The companions vary amongst each other in terms of the level of their companionship, the greatness of their companionship, and inshallah we will look at the 4 or 5 levels of companionship which are basically mentioned in the Quran, in terms of who are the most superior, and then in the various levels thereafter. So next, we're going to mention numerous ayat from the Quran and 1 or 2 ahadith. And from these texts, we'll be able to summarize a very general belief or attitude towards the companions, right? So from these texts is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, and all of these texts are basically a praise of the companions. From them is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, Muhammadun Rasulullah, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ, those who are with him, they are stern against disbelievers, رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُمْ, whilst being merciful amongst themselves. And another verse is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Allah has promised those who believe and do righteous deeds among them forgiveness and a mighty reward. This is in reference to the companions. And also والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين تبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Those who are foremost, meaning in faith, the first ones amongst the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and those who follow them in goodness, Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. Also the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Indeed, Allah is pleased with the believers when they gave you the pledge of allegiance beneath the tree. Right? So, and also the hadith of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best of generations is my generation, then those who follow them, then those who follow them. And also the statement of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, لا تصبوا أصحابي والذي نفسي والذي نفس محمد بيده لو أنفق أحدكم مثل أهد ذهب ما بلغ مد أحدكم ولا نصفيه. Do not revile my companions. Do not revile my companions. By him in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, if one of you was to spend the likes of Uhud in gold, it would not reach the handful of one of them, and not half of it. Right? So if one of us was to spend the amount of Uhud in gold, in charity, it wouldn't equal a handful of what they spend of anything, not gold, of anything in charity. Also, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل أولئك أعظم درجة من الذين أنفقوا من بعد وقاتلوا وكلا وعد الله الحسنى. Not equal are those among you who spent from their wealth before the conquest of Mecca and who fought. They are greater in rank than those who spent afterwards and who fought afterwards, meaning after the conquest of Mecca. But to all of them, Allah has promised goodness. Right? So these are just a small selection of texts. In these texts, what can we derive from these texts? There are 4 key points from these and many other texts, because these texts, these texts explain the position of Ahlul Sunnah towards the companions. So from them, the first issue is that any companion who died upon Iman, then he is promised forgiveness and Allah's pleasure. Right? So from these texts, every companion who died upon Iman, he has been promised in these texts with forgiveness and Allah's good pleasure. Right? Keep these points in mind, because this is a refutation, for example, of the Rafidah, of the Shia, of anyone who basically deviated on the issue of the companions, whether he's a Nasibi, whether he is a Rafidi. Right? These verses in general, they are a refutation of all of these groups. So the first point in these texts, very clear, Allah has promised. He's promised forgiveness and Allah's good pleasure. The second point that we take from these texts is that all of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they are udul. They are udul. Udul meaning that they are trustworthy. They are reliable and they are trustworthy. Udul. Why? Because it is Allah Azza wa Jal who has made ta'deel of the Sahaba. Allah made ta'deel of the Sahaba. Allah is the one who said what He said about them, of their righteousness, of their piety, of their truthfulness, of their striving in His cause, in His path. All of these, this is Allah Azza wa Jal who is giving them this ta'deel. And He praised them. And what is the meaning of adala? Adala meaning trustworthiness, meaning that they are trustworthy in the religion. Right? They are upright in their religion, and they are upright in whatever they narrate of the Sharia. Whatever they narrate of the Sharia. And that whatever ijtihad they made, like if they made an ijtihad, if they strove to understand and give a ruling on something, or they made a decision about something, about an issue from ijtihad, then, and if they erred in that thing, this does not affect their uprightness. It doesn't affect their trustworthiness. Right? It doesn't diminish from their trustworthiness. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal has praised all of them. Absolutely. The praise is absolute, right? And nothing takes that away. Not even a mistake that they made or a slip that they fell into, right? So this is the second point that we take from these texts. The third point that we take is that to revile the companions is a contradiction to these texts. These texts that you've heard from the Quran and from the Sunnah, a small sample of these texts, this is, to revile the companions, it contradicts what these verses have clearly indicated of the praise of Allah. And in fact, it is prohibited to revile the companions. لا تصبوا أصحابي. This is an explicit command. لا تصبوا أصحابي. So, in these verses, what they show therefore is the unlawfulness of reviling the companions, Inshallah, anyone who reviles the companions, what is the ruling upon them? We will come to that later, inshallah ta'ala, as we go through the various points. The fourth point is, as we can clearly see, that the verses indicate that the companions, they vary in their rank and in their degree, and they are not all at the same level. This is very clear from these verses, because in the last verse that we read, which is in Surah Al-Hadid, Allah Azza wa Jal distinguished between those who were believers before the conquest of Makkah, right? Before the conquest of Makkah, and who spent from their wealth and they strove in Allah's path, and those who became Muslim after the conquest of Makkah. They're not equal. The first ones are greater in rank and reward, but all of them Allah has promised goodness, right? So this is now the first point. The first point is that when we look at the texts that speak about the Sahaba, we bring all those texts together, we can derive four general points, right? That all the Sahaba are promised forgiveness, Allah's pleasure, that all of them are udul, they are trustworthy, reliable when it comes to conveying the religion, and nothing takes away their trustworthiness, right? There's nothing that takes away the trustworthiness of a companion. Even if a companion fell into a sin, even if it was a major sin, he repented from that, right? It doesn't take away from his adala. If he died upon Iman, then by textual judgment of the Quran, he is upright and trustworthy. He's adl, right? He's upright and trustworthy. Thirdly, to revile them is prohibited. It directly contradicts what we have been told by Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran and by the Messenger, and the Messenger has explicitly prohibited it, right? La tasubbu ashabi, clear explicit prohibition. And fourthly, all the companions, they are not all at the same level, they are of various degrees and ranks. Anyhow, that's the first point. The second mas'ala, the second point is that At-Tahaawiyyah rahimahullah, he said, وَنُحِبُّ أَصْحَابَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم وَلَا نُفْرِطْ فِي حُبِّ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ وَلَا نَتَبَرَّأْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ. Right? We love the companions of Allah's Messenger. We do not exaggerate in the love of any one of them, nor do we free ourselves from any one of them. Okay, so loving the companions, therefore, then, is fard. What is the hukm upon this? It is fard, it is wajib. And it is from al-muwalat. Al-muwalat. It is from loyalty, the obligatory loyalty to the companions of Allah's Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, when we speak about love and loyalty, what specifically and practically does it mean? Right? What does it require from us in terms of our speech, in terms of our behavior, to love the companions and to be loyal to them? It is the following things. It comprises the following things. First of all, there has to be al-mawaddah in the heart. Qiyamul mawaddah fil qalb. Right? There has to be the actual feeling of love in the heart. And obviously that love itself, how does it arise? It arises because of what we are told about them in the Quran, Allah's praise of them, their excellence, their virtues, their sacrifice, their aiding and defending the Messenger of Allah sallallahu for what they did of goodness, and the transmission of the Sharia, and so on and so forth. Those are the things which bring about this feeling of love in the first place, right? The more we learn about them and Allah's testimony, with respect to them, that knowledge brings that mawaddah into the heart, right? That has to be there. Obviously, this would not be present for someone who would be a hypocrite, right? So that there has to be, that which is in the heart first of all. Secondly, to praise them, to praise them whenever they are mentioned, and to ask for Allah's pleasure upon them, right? To say radiyallahu anhum, or radiyallahu anhu, whenever we mention any of the companions, right? To ask for Allah's pleasure upon them, and to praise them and to speak well of them. That's the second thing. The third thing is that whatever actions emanated from them, whatever actions came from any of the companions, that we do not interpret it or explain it except with goodness, in a good way, in a good light. Right? Whatever came from the companions. Because we know by textual judgment of the Quran that they all were seeking the face of Allah. They were seeking the face of Allah. They were being sincere in the religion. And whatever action they did, like we know things happened amongst the companions. We know they had differences. We know some of them even they fought. Right? And we know like many of these things happened. But we know by textual judgment of the Quran that all of them were seeking Allah's pleasure. They were seeking Allah's face. We know that all of them are rewarded. We know that all of them are forgiven. This means, therefore, that whatever actions arose from them, they are not interpreted except upon goodness, except in a good light. And, for this reason. The fourth point that's required from us is that we defend them, because from the requirements of love and loyalty is to defend. Right? Because al-muwalat, when we speak of al-muwalat, which is loyalty, it comprises two things. Al-hub wal-nusra. Al-hub wal-nusra. So when you are loyal to someone, if you're loyal to someone, you're loyal to them because you love them, but it also necessitates from you that you defend them as well. Right? So for example, if you have someone, a brother who you love for the sake of Allah, and he's there with you, and then he gets robbed. He's being robbed, and you just stand and watch. Well, that's a proof that you don't love him, because from the requirements of loyalty, it's a proof that you're not loyal to him, because loyalty demands, and the love that you have necessitates that you aid him and support him, right? With nusra, right? So, because we love the Sahaba, it necessitates, therefore, that we have to defend them at every moment or every situation or every context in which they need to be defended. Right? This is part and parcel of love of the Sahaba. So for example, if someone belittles, one of the companions and finds fault with him, and you just sat there and you remain quiet, well, that's not loyalty towards the companions. That's not loyalty, because from loyalty is an-nusra, to aid and support and defend. So the fourth thing is that a person, he defends them, because it is from the muqtada, it is from the necessities of love, it is from those things which are inseparable from love, that you defend them and you aid them. And as the Shaykh says, min ma'na al-mahabba wal-walaya an-nusra, right, to aid. So when they are mentioned with other than goodness, when someone belittles them, or he doubts in their truthfulness, or he doubts in their trustworthiness, then it is wajib that they are aided. It is wajib that they are defended, or the companion is aided, supported, defended. Right? So these are four practical things. This is what we mean to love the Sahaba. It includes all of these things. Number one, the actual presence of the feeling of love, first of all. Secondly, to praise them and speak well of them at every moment, and to ask for Allah's mercy upon them, radiyallahu anhum. Thirdly, all of the actions which came from them, they are interpreted in the best way and mentioned in the best way, because we know they were sincere and they sought the face of Allah Azza wa Jal. And fourthly, that they are defended and they are aided, because that is from the necessities of al-hub, of love, and al-muwalat, of loyalty to them. So this love that we are speaking of it is a love which is a love that is in moderation. It is a love of moderation. It is between, those who fall into exaggeration and those who basically free themselves from the companions, right? So they are of various, groups. So the Shaykh then goes on to explain that there are some amongst the people who exaggerated in some of the companions, that they gave them the qualities of uluhiyyah. They made them equal with Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So for example, the Saba'iyyah, Abdullah bin Saba and his followers, they claimed that Ali radiallahu anhu, that he was Allah, right? They gave him the quality of ilahiyyah. That's what they did with Ali radiallahu anhu. And, right, so some people have gone to the level where they made some of the companions equal with Allah. This is shirk and kufr. Or it can be ghulu, exaggeration to a degree, not to that level as giving him uluhiyyah, but to the level where you love one of the companions so much that you belittle and attack some of the other companions because of the love of that companion, right? So this would be, for example, the Rafidah, who attack Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu because of their excessive love for Ali. And likewise, there are others from the Nasibah, the Nawasib. They are the ones who hate Ahlul Bayt. They attack Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima and the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because of their excessive love for some of the other companions, right? So the point being that yes, we love the companions, but this love is a legislated love. It is a love of moderation. It is not a love of excessiveness, exaggeration, like we see many of these groups and their sects they fell into. So this love that we are speaking of is a love that basically necessitates that we have loyalty to all of the companions together as a whole. We don't have any loyalty to a specific companion and then we build our religion around that love, as we see was done by the Rafidah, as was done by the Nawasib. Rather, our love and loyalty is a generalized love for all of the companions collectively as a whole, right? So this is the second point. And so on the one hand, there are those who make ghulu, as we mentioned. On the other hand, there are those who basically abandon the Sahaba. So we said there are those who exaggerate in Ali and Ahlul Bayt, and they despise Abu Bakr and Umar and the other Sahaba, right? Conversely, there are those who hate and despise the Ahlul Bayt because they exaggerate in love for some of the other Sahaba, right? That's a ghulu. However, on the other side, there are other groups, like for example, there are those who are the Zanadika, the heretics and hypocrites. They are the ones who hate and detest and disbelieve in all of the companions, like they reject all of the companions. And they believe that these companions were not really, they were just ignorant people, and they were just, blindly following. They don't, so this really is coming from the Zanadiqa. These are enemies, they are hypocrites, they are not really believers in any way. Then you have those who ascribe to Islam, the Rafidah, who free themselves from most of the companions, or the Khawarij, who basically free themselves from, mostly all of the companions, right? So, as you can see, we've got different types of people who went astray, and they went astray in different ways. One of the principles that these people fell into is, for example, some of them said that, okay, we love Ali and we love Ahlul Bayt, but love can only be complete when we free ourselves from the others. Right? Meaning that this love for Ali is not pure, is not complete until and unless we free ourselves from Abu Bakr and Umar. This is totally false. This is, they operated upon this principle. And, this is what led some of these people to exaggerate in some companions and to belittle other companions. So, all of this is incorrect, as you can see. Point number 2 then, what we mentioned in point number 1. Point number 1 is the definition of a Sahabi. Definition of a Sahabi, general texts from which we can derive a general position towards them. Point number 2 is the issue of loving the companions. Right? There are 4 elements to that. And thereafter, we see that people can go astray in many different ways. Right? You exaggerate in one companion and belittle others. Or you reject all of the companions, or most of the companions. And then, you can see how people fell into mistakes in this issue of love, of mahabba itself. So the point being, point number 2 is that we love the companions with a legislated love, with a love of moderation. The third point, in fact, loving them is deen, is religion. Why is it religion? Because Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned it in the Quran, so therefore it becomes deen, it is religion. The third point is that the companions radiallahu anhum are of various levels. They're not all at the same level. And the greatest of the Sahaba, the greatest level, the first level, are the 10 who were granted paradise. Al-Ashara, the 10 who were given the glad tidings of paradise. They were given glad tidings in a single sitting. In the same sitting, the Messenger mentioned each of them by name. Now obviously from these 10, we know that there's the 4 rightly guided khulafa, and from the 4 khulafa, we know there's a specific order. So it is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and then after him Umar radiallahu anhu, then after him Uthman radiallahu anhu, then after him Ali radiallahu anhu. Right? So they are the most superior of the ummah. And then from the 10, the remaining 10, there is Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, there's Sa'id bin Zayd, and there's Talha bin Ubaidillah, and there is Az-Zubair bin al-Awwam, there's Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah, and there's Abdurrahman bin Auf. Right? So these are the 10. And like we said, these 10 were given, in fact, these are not the only 10 that were given glad tidings of paradise. So there isn't just 10 that were given glad tidings. There's actually more who were given glad tidings. But in this case, all 10 were mentioned in one and the same sitting in one hadith. He mentioned them all one by one. Abu Bakr fil Jannah, Umar fil Jannah, Uthman fil Jannah. It went all the way through, right? So all of these 10 are promised paradise. So this is the first group, right? This group of 10 have the highest rank. And obviously amongst the 10, as we said, there is also an order, the 4 rightly guided khulafa. And amongst the 4 is Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. The second group after that is the Muhajirun, al-Muhajirun, the ones who became Muslim in Mecca. Those who became Muslim in Mecca. Right? And they had patience with the Messenger of Allah whilst they were in Mecca, and then they emigrated to Medina. Right? This is the second level, right? And we are speaking here in terms of the jins, in terms of the general category, the genus of the, as a category. So everyone who was in Mecca became a Muslim, was with the Messenger of Allah and remained with him, and then had patience, and then migrated. This is the second category, right? They have the superiority after that. The third category are those who witnessed the battle of Badr, whether from the Muhajirun or from the Ansar. Right? Muhajirun or the Ansar. So the battle of Badr, those who participated in that battle, and obviously this is obviously after the Hijrah, so amongst them are the Muhajirin, and amongst them are the Ansar, right? So whoever is in that group and that category, they have the third level of superiority. The fourth level after that is the general group of the Ansar, right? The general group of the Ansar who became Muslims at the beginning, who were Ansar at the beginning, and they, all of these have been mentioned. وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ. Right, those who were foremost in faith from the Muhajirin and the Ansar, right? So the Sabiqun amongst the Muhajirin and the Sabiqun amongst the Ansar. And then there's the Sabiqun overall, right? So the Sabiqun who are in Mecca, who became Muslim first, right? The Sabiqun amongst the Muhajirin. And amongst the Ansar, remember those people who became Muslim while the Messenger was in Mecca still, right? And they became Muslim in Medina, right? So there's Sabiqun amongst them as well, the Ansar, right? And they never became Muslim all at the same time. So the fourth group then is the generality of the Ansar who became Muslim, and especially those who became Muslim at the beginning, right? So they have the fourth level of superiority. And then after that, the fifth level, and also because these Ansar, they participated in the battles as well, right? So the early ones, they participated in the battle of Badr and Uhud and all various other battles. The fifth level are those who became Muslim before Al-Fath, right? Meaning the conquest of Mecca. This can either be the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, or it can be the conquest of Mecca itself, right? The scholars differ on that. It could be that, or it could be this. But basically, anyone who became a Muslim before the conquest of Mecca and after the others that have preceded, then they are next in their level of superiority. And then after that is those who became Muslim after the conquest of Mecca, right? And so that's in the verse that we mentioned at the end. لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل. Not equal are those amongst you who spent before the conquest and who fought, to the rest of the verse, right? So very clearly we can see there is many of the different levels. Some companions became Muslim after the conquest, some became before the conquest. So therefore the point being, not all of them are of the same level. Many companions entered into Islam during the 9th and 10th year after Hijrah, right at the very end. Many large numbers entered into Islam after that. So this order that you've seen, this is the order of superiority and excellence. And there's an important point to be made here, which is that we are speaking in a general sense, right? There is an issue, which is, for example, can someone who became a Muslim later, can he be superior, like as in terms of, is there an individual who is superior to a companion who might have become Muslim earlier, right? So what the Shaykh explains here is that we can theorize and say that there could be, but we don't actually say that, right? Like it could be the case that there is a specific companion who became Muslim later, and he excels in his iman and he's more virtuous and righteous than someone who came maybe earlier. That's theoretically that's possible, but we don't speak like that. We don't mention that we speak only in terms of the genus, of the general categories, right? So we say the 10 who were given a promise of paradise, and then the Muhajirin, and then those from the Ansar, and we speak like that, and we leave it at that basically, right? So, in fact, he gives an example to illustrate this point, which is the example of Abdurrahman bin Auf. Abdurrahman bin Auf, right? And he's from those who were granted the promise of a paradise. And conversely, we have Khalid bin al-Walid. Khalid bin al-Walid was from the enemies of the Muslims, right? And he fought against the Muslims until he became a Muslim later on. And what happened is that Khalid bin al-Walid, he spoke ill of Abdurrahman bin Auf. He spoke ill of him. And the Messenger of Allah said, "La tasubbu ashabi." La tasubbu ashabi. He said that to Khalid bin al-Walid. So how can this be? Because Khalid bin al-Walid is a Sahabi, but so is Abdurrahman bin Auf. Right. And the reason for this is because Abdurrahman bin Auf has been a Muslim way before the conquest. Way before the conquest of Mecca. His companionship with the Messenger of Allah is very long, right? So he has what we can call actual long-term companionship. Whereas Khalid bin al-Walid is, someone who is relatively new. And so that's why the Messenger said to Khalid bin al-Walid, "Do not revile my companions." Right? From the angle that someone who is an established long-term companion, he has a greater right to be called a companion compared to someone whose companionship is only, a limited duration. So that's the context in which, the Messenger of Allah, he said, "La tasubbu ashabi." So the point being that whilst it might be theoretically possible that amongst all of the thousands and thousands of companions, there might be one who became a Muslim later, and he's superior to one who came before, but we speak in terms of the general genus, like the general category. We speak and we limit it to that basically. This brings us to the fourth point, and the fourth point now, obviously we've spoken about loving the companions. We've spoken about how irrespective of what they did, the ijtihad that they made, any errors that they might have fallen into, even sins that they might have fallen into, right? Because Allah has spoken of them that they are truthful, they seek the face of Allah, they sacrificed for His sake. We know that there was never any evil, ill. They are cleared of that. This means that all of their actions are interpreted with the best of interpretation, with goodness. But this brings the issue now of the fourth point, which is that the companions nevertheless are still men. They are still men. And they can err, they can be correct and they can err. Right? They are mujtahidun. They can, derive rulings and make decisions and look into the texts. And some of them may be correct in the issues, others may not be correct in the issues, right? So the point being that, as we said before, because Allah has spoken of them in that way, then we interpret all of their actions with the meaning that they intended to support the religion. Whatever ijtihad they made, whatever decision they made, we know that they were intending to support the religion. And we know that they loved Allah and they loved His Messenger. And if they made an ijtihad in anything, either they were correct, so they get 2 rewards, or they made a mistake, in which case they are rewarded with 1 reward, even if they basically made a mistake. And this means that we are not allowed to say about any companion that he was purely desiring the world. For example, that when he made an ijtihad, he was seeking after the dunya or anything like that. right? We don't make any of these types of interpretations. It's not allowed to do that, because this can happen to people after them, right? This person made an ijtihad. He did it because there was something he was seeking from the world, and it influenced his ijtihad. We are not allowed to say this about any of the companions, because, as we've said, by textual judgment of the Quran, that all of the companions, they were seeking the face of Allah, they were seeking Allah's pleasure. They weren't seeking the world, they were seeking the hereafter. Even if at times they may have been admonished, for example, the admonitions in the Quran, that's just part of admonition which they took and they were affected by, and had their iman increased by way of that, right? But they weren't, seekers of the dunya. So all of their ijtihads that they made, right, even in those things which they erred, then we interpret all of that they were seeking the aid of the religion, they were seeking the truth, and they were not seeking anything, from the dunya. Until even when the companions, when they fought against each other, right? When the companions fought against each other, that fighting that they were doing wasn't, for example, they hated each other. It's not like from hate, but it's from the angle that this companion sees this to be the truth, and this companion sees that to be the truth. And each one believes that it's a test from Allah that he has to abide by that truth. I'll give you an example. Very clearly, the clear example is Ali radiallahu anhu and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, after the killing of Uthman. Uthman was murdered, right, by some of the hypocrites, the Saba'iyah, right, the followers of Abdullah bin Saba. So then a difference occurred as to what should happen, what should we do. And it was from the view of Ali radiallahu anhu in Medina that right now is not the time to pursue the assassins of Uthman. Because in Medina what had happened is there was thousands of these people had come from outside, and they obviously held a siege. They held a siege around Uthman's house, and they killed him. And it wasn't the right time to do anything, because it would have led to more chaos and more trouble. So the view of Ali radiallahu anhu was to basically, let's leave it, let things settle down, and then after that we will pursue the killers. And as for Muawiyah radiallahu anhu and whoever's with him, they were of the view that we have to establish justice and we have to seek revenge for Uthman now, while these killers are here present right now in Medina. Right? Obviously we know that from the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, we know that Ali was correct. Ali, in his ijtihad, he was the one who was closer to the truth. That was the correct thing to do. And Muawiyah was, further away from the truth in that respect. But both of them had a truth. Muawiyah was correct. We do need to pursue the killers and establish justice, right? So here, it's not that Ali now developed hatred for Muawiyah and Muawiyah now developed hatred for Ali. No. It's each of them see that this is a truth, right, that we have to pursue, because this is what Allah wants from us. But it's just that one of them was wrong or further away from the truth, and the other one was correct or closest to the truth, right? So even, as we said before, these things can happen amongst the Sahaba, but none of this affects their adalah. It doesn't affect their trustworthiness or their truthfulness or their uprightness in religion, right? Remember we said that before? That anything that happens from the Sahaba, it's always interpreted in the best light possible. Why? Because of textual judgment in the Quran. They seek the face of Allah, they are truthful, they are upright, they strove in His path. That means that everything they sought, it wasn't for the dunya, right? Which means that they were seeking to aid the religion. And so that's how we interpret everything that they do. And so therefore, they are either rewarded once, if they made a mistake, or they are rewarded twice, right? If they were upon the truth. So, those issues which happened amongst the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, we speak well of them, we praise them, and there was when the Pledge of Allegiance was given beneath the tree, there was like 1,400 to 1,500 companions, right? In the verse, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Right? This is just before the Pledge of Allegiance under the tree, and there were about 1,400 to 1,500 companions who were present. So when we speak and when we look at these verses are very general. They are praising the companions in a general sense. It's not like some people claim that this applies only to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, but this companion did this and this companion did. No, these verses are very general. They are mentioned in the context of battles. They are mentioned in the context of the Pledge of Allegiance here. They are mentioned those before the conquest, those after the conquest. The verses mention those who are foremost in faith and those who came after them. All of these verses, when you look at them and the different ways that the verses come, it encompasses all of the companions without exception. Without exception. Right? And this is why, this is from our principle, that when we speak of the companions, we interpret all of their actions in the best way, in the most correct way, in the best way. We don't revile them. We don't say that they were seeking the world. We don't speak with any of this type of speech. So this is point number 4. Point number 5 is the issue of reviling the companions. And inshallah, what we'll do is I think we'll leave that for the next lesson, because we've come close to the end of the time for this lesson. Issue number 5 is the ruling on reviling the companions, reviling them all, reviling most of them, reviling one of them. And okay, what if you don't revile them? What if you belittle them? What if what's the ruling on all of these different issues? So inshallah ta'ala, we'll leave that for the next lesson. With that, we'll conclude today's lesson. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.